Here's a map that gives you a general idea of where things are going. Up here is the camp of Sabinus and Cotta. Notice it's way over there on this end of Gaul. Julius Caesar has left Gaul and gone back to Rome for the winter because he has to go maintain his political position inside the city. So the people who are getting ready to leave the winter quarters are up here, and Caesar is way down there. This diagram is intended to give you a general idea of what's going on in chapter 5.32. Notice over here we have the Hiberna, the winter quarters. They have a nice, nifty defensive wall built around them. And we know from chapter 31 that Caesar told us the Romans left and they traveled in a longissimo agmine, a really long line. Now, Caesar is going to describe various parts of the line in chapter 32. The front of the line, he's going to use the word primos to describe the people who are at the front of the line. And he's going to use the word novissimos to describe the people at the back of the line. Novissimos. And that makes sense because if you're looking at the line, primos, those are the ones that you see first. So that's why they're the front of the line. And novissimos, the newest, those are the ones that you see last. So Caesar talks about the front and the back of the line using the phrases primos and novissimos. About 2 miles from the winter quarters, the Romans are going to encounter this geographical feature here. So there are going to be a couple phrases you need to know. The word for 2 miles is duobus milia passuum, which literally means 2,000 steps, and there's about 1,000 steps in a Roman mile. And then he's going to describe this geographical feature using this word, vallis. Do not mix up the word vallis with the word vallum. A vallum is this thing surrounding the winter quarters, but a vallis is this geographical feature here, which of course is where we get the English word for valley. One other thing to note about this vallis is that sometimes Caesar uses the preposition con in front of it, so both con vallis and vallis refer to a valley. Ad hostes post eaquam ex nocturno fremitu vigiliisque de profectione eorum seinserunt, collocatis insidiis bipertito in silvis opportuno atque occulto loco a millibus passuum cerciter duobus Romanorum adventum expectabant. Well, this is not looking good. Notice Caesar starts us off with, but the enemy. The guys just left. They're thinking they're okay, but the enemy. So right there, Caesar's telling us not going as planned. Then he gives us this nifty dependent clause marker, and this dependent clause starts there and it ends here. So we've got the main subject, the enemy, but we don't know what they're doing yet because Caesar is giving us a dependent clause first. Inside this dependent clause, he starts with a prepositional phrase, from the nocturnal fremitu, noise and wakefulness, and then another prepositional phrase, about the setting out of those guys, meaning the Romans. Oh, and then here's a verb in that dependent clause. Look at that, 2 prepositional phrases and a verb. After they learned about this stuff, because of that, so apparently the enemy was keeping an eye on things, after they sensed about the setting out of the Romans from the nocturnal fremitu and vigiliis. I'll let you use vocab for that. So we're still waiting to see what the enemy did after they found out. Collocatis insidiis. Oh, ablative absolute, but I'm sure you recognize that right away. Look, we've got an ablative participle, ablative noun. So we're going to translate that with noun participle, with the plots or traps having been placed. And now Caesar gives us some details about the traps having been placed, and it's not looking good. Let's see, we've got bipertito, looks like it's ablative. We have a prepositional phrase here. Oh, look, And then we have another ablative. These are both adjectives. A two-part, convenient, and here's another adjective. Oh, look, all these words modify the place. So apparently the bad guys put traps in some kind of place, and Caesar describes the place as in two parts, and convenient and hidden. So in this place, oh, in the forest, which makes sense because if your bad guy is waiting for the Romans, you're going to hide from them, and the forest happens to be a very convenient place. Now Caesar tells us where this happens. Milibus passum caricatur duobus. Oh, roughly caricature 2 miles from the winter quarters. So we're still waiting to see what the subject was doing, but we know the enemy did this after all this stuff happened. They did this where it happened, but we're still waiting to see what they did. Can you guess what the enemy did about 2 miles away from the Roman headquarters when they found out about the Romans leaving? Oh, look at here it is. They were expectabant adventum Romanorum. Surprise, surprise, genitive going there. Adventum, of course, is a direct object of expectabant. On to sentence 2. Et cum se maior pars agmenis in magnum convalum demisisset. Ex utraque parte eius valis subito se ostenderant, novissimosque premere et primos prohibere ascensu atque in equissimo nostris locum praelium committere coeperent. Caesar goes on. And when cum ding 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 cum clause. So this is a dependent clause that starts here. It's going to end here with the subjunctive verb demisisset. So when, and then he gives us a say, which is kind of dirty pull because we don't know who the say is talking about yet. It's reflexive though. Oh, here's the subject, and when a big part of the line, so apparently the big part of the line does something to itself. When the big part of the line, prepositional phrase, in a big valley, when a big part of the line, oh, here it is, had sent itself into a big valley, which makes sense. It's a huge line, so when most of it got into the valley. So we finished that cum clause. Now we're going to go back to the main sentence. And of course, the subject of the main sentence is still those pesky enemies up there. What did the enemy do? Ex utraque parte, from either side, and then we've got either side of what? Of the valley. From either side of the valley, subito, suddenly, se ostenderant, direct object of the verb ostenderant. Again, hostes is the subject, ostenderant is the verb, and se is the direct object. So apparently the enemy revealed themselves suddenly. When did they do it? When our guys were pretty much in the valley. Uh-oh, not looking good. We'll keep going. What else did the bad guys do? Novissimosque. So this que here tells us we're still continuing our main sentence. There's just another clause. There's probably another verb covering it. But notice novissimos is accusative. So they showed themselves and they did something to the back of our line. Premere, that's an infinitive. So it's probably either a complementary infinitive going with the main verb or an indirect statement. We're going to have to hold that thought and find out. But they did it, whatever it is, they did it to the back of a line, and another infinitive, prohibere. They also did this, prohibere, to the front of the line. And that is to keep, and prohibere takes an ablative of separation because you keep the accusative, the front, from an ablative. So apparently it was something about prohibiting the front of our line from the ascent, i.e. out of the valley. We're still waiting to see what the main verb is. And in equissimo loco, that means an unfavorable position. A position, loco, unfavorable for our guys. Caesar is being very Roman here, saying nostris. He doesn't bother to say Romans because he's talking to the Romans. So he says our guys. So in a position unfavorable to our guys, direct object, here's the word for battle. Another infinitive, committere, And here's the main verb. They began. So now we can put it together. The enemy began to pursue our rear, the guys in the back, and to keep the front guys from climbing out of the valley. And they began to start the battle in a place unfavorable to our guys. Uh-oh, not looking so good for the Romans, but fear not, they are well trained, and soon we will find out what happens to them.